In August 2022, after 15 years of marriage, we hit a rough patch. Communication, money, and intimacy problems led to conflicts in our already busy lives. I found myself blamed for everything going wrong by my wife. Her solution? A trial separation. We had 3 kids aged 9, 11, 13, and 15, making the decision even harder, especially for our daughters. Within 3 weeks of the separation, my 15-year-old daughter shared her suspicion that my wife might be having an affair. During the separation, my wife suggested I stay with a friend who'd been through a divorce and had plenty of space. Reluctantly, I agreed to keep the peace at home. Our kids, especially the 13 and 15-year-olds, weren't happy about the separation. Despite their resistance, I convinced them it was temporary, hoping it would bring harmony back to our family. Our long-standing financial struggles were a constant issue. Marrying young without advanced skills made ends meet challenging. The house, inherited from my grandparents, was a reminder of our financial limitations. Initially, I hoped the trial separation would make my wife realize how much she and the kids missed me, leading to her asking me to come back. Instead, she frequently called, not for emotional support or intimacy, but to fix things around the house. I felt like the handyman, handling household issues and disciplining the kids, fulfilling the role of a father but not a husband. I started suspecting my wife might be having an affair, especially since our bedroom had lost its spark. I was always the one initiating intimacy, and she seemed unwilling to fully participate. Then, 3 weeks after leaving the house, my 15-year-old daughter dropped a bombshell during a phone conversation. She confided in me, expressing her suspicion that her mom might be seeing someone else. This revelation added another layer of complexity to our already challenging situation. When I pressed my daughter about evidence regarding the suspected affair, she admitted lacking concrete proof but pointed out changes in her mom's behavior, raising suspicions. According to her, my wife seemed happier, sometimes almost giddy. She was always in a rush, coming home late and dressing up more than usual. Additionally, my wife frequently laughed and talked on the phone in the middle of the night. Hoping to reunite the family, my daughter believed that if I confronted my wife and exposed the affair, it might lead to us getting back together, creating a happily ever after scenario. This conversation with my daughter raised numerous red flags. While I had suspected something might be going on, my wife had done a good job hiding it. Now, with these changes becoming more evident, it seemed like the trial separation was just a cover, giving her more freedom for questionable behavior. It's fascinating how over 15 years, you can become more trusting and let your guard down. I knew my wife worked for a distribution company, dealing mostly with older 18-wheeler drivers. As one of the few women at her workplace and very attractive, she naturally attracted attention. We started dating our teens, and are both 35 now. After my conversation with my daughter and growing suspicions, I decided to secretly visit her workplace to find out what was keeping her out late. I got worried that my wife might be having an affair with someone from her job. So, I decided to check her workplace after hours, hoping to catch her in the act. I parked on the opposite side of her workplace, keeping an eye on her car. To my surprise, she left the building at the expected time and got into her car. Initially, I thought of giving up and heading home, but she drove in a direction away from our home. Intrigued, I followed her. Around 6 p.m. in November, darkness setting in, she headed towards the highway and drove to a truck stop, trying to give her the benefit of the doubt due to her work with logistics dispatch for truckers. I considered a work-related reason. She parked close to an 18-wheeler, and as she got out of her car, I noticed her outfit was quite revealing. That's when I decided to start recording her on my cell phone. I drove my car closer, got out, and found a spot to see if she was on the passenger side. The darkness forced me to come closer for a clear view, and unfortunately there was no doubt about what was happening. She wasn't on the passenger side. Both she and the truck driver were in the sleeper section of the truck. I waited for almost 30 minutes in the blind spot, hoping to catch her leaving the truck. As I stood there, I could hear what I imagined was the sound of them being intimate. Those 30 minutes felt like an eternity, and I had never felt such intense hatred in my life. When she finally got off the passenger side, she seemed shocked, hastily fixing her hair and dress, as if she had seen a ghost. As she descended, she noticed me recording her with my phone's flash on. Initially, she didn't recognize me in the darkness and with the flash on. I remember her asking, "Hey, why are you recording me?" It was only when I spoke that she realized it was me. I said, "I am just making sure I capture you whoring on camera." Despite her denials, she insisted it wasn't what it looked like and claimed she was just working. I retorted, "Yeah, you're working all right. I didn't know you were tricking on the side." Ignoring her denials, she tried to snatch my camera. I pushed her away and continued recording as I followed her to her car. The guy she was involved with must have thought he could intervene, so he emerged from his cab with a gun when he saw the commotion. Pointing the gun at me, he demanded I stop recording or he would shoot. Defiantly, I stood my ground, asserting my right to record my wife cheating on me. My wife pleaded with him to lower the gun, and other truckers who knew him gathered, attempting to convince him to put the gun down. A more rational person might have stopped recording when faced with a weapon. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking straight. When the guy realized I wasn't intimidated, he lowered his weapon and returned to his truck. My wife drove away, but before that, everyone was urging me to stop recording, saying it's public, and advising me to stop. However, I knew I had the right to record for my protection. After my wife left, I called the police and waited for them to arrive at the scene. When they got there, the truck driver thought it was a good idea to drive away, but the police intervened and stopped him. I showed them the recording, leading to his arrest for pointing a gun at me. He faced charges of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Instead of going to my friend's house, I went straight home, likely around 10 p.m. En route, I called my 15-year-old daughter to share what I had just witnessed with her mom, and that I was on my way back. Upon reaching home, my wife was already in an argument with my daughter, triggering a chain reaction with her siblings. Names were exchanged, and under normal circumstances I might have disciplined my daughter. However, it felt like hypocrisy as my wife had been controlling our daughter's dating and clothing choices, all while kicking me out to be with men at the truck stop. She argued she wasn't involved with many men, just one almost 50 years old, a regular patron. I had no doubt she was turning tricks. I insisted she couldn't sleep in the house, telling her to take my place at her friend's house. This led to a struggle, and in my anger I started throwing her things out of the house. The kids were all awake, crying, witnessing the chaos in the middle of the night. It wasn't a good scene, but I didn't want the police involved, and I wasn't leaving my house. She knew everyone in the house was against her, and despite being in the wrong, she tried to act like it was my fault, and downplayed the situation. That night I slept in the master bedroom, and she slept on the couch. The next morning I reached out to my friend and explained what had unfolded. He promptly connected me with a lawyer, paving the way for me to initiate the divorce process. With no shared property, and the house being inherited, she wouldn't have a claim to it in the divorce. Despite some people suggesting a different route, I showed my daughter the video recording on my phone, allowing her to witness everything. I explained to her why continuing the marriage was untenable, and she agreed with my decision. Opting not to jeopardize her job by reporting her actions, I knew it would add a financial burden during the divorce. When she learned about my divorce filing, she suddenly expressed a desire to work on the marriage. She claimed her infidelity stemmed from my lack of attention, emphasizing it was only with that one guy. She asserted she hadn't planned to leave me, as the man she cheated with was married. According to her, he had pursued her for months, buying her things, and she eventually gave in but regretted her actions. Despite her attempts to reconcile, I saw no reason to continue the marriage. Communication had become challenging, and she was willing to give up the marriage at the truck stop. Constant arguments and fights had irreparably damaged the trust in our relationship. Having the house to myself with my kids seemed like a better idea, especially since I got along better with them than with her. She could continue her actions at the truck stop. During the divorce proceedings, she claimed I had influenced the kids against her, stating they all wanted to live with me and didn't want to stay with her. With a house and appearing as the more stable parent, the kids strongly expressed their desire to live with me. Consequently, I was granted full custody, and she had to pay me child support. As for the truck driver, he faced serious consequences, charged with a class A misdemeanor for his actions. Upon discovering his employer's knowledge of the arrest, he faced job termination. I contemplated exposing the video to his wife, but hesitated. I didn't want to push a man too far, particularly someone foolish enough to brandish a gun publicly when caught with his wife. Despite posing no threat to him, I decided against it. While the divorce was pending finalization over the next few months, I already had my kids with me. Meanwhile, my soon-to-be ex-wife began residing in a studio apartment near her workplace.